Hello everybody and welcome to Astrology for Beginners. This is video number 3. Today we're going to be talking about the planets, the Sun, the Moon and Mercury. This is for your spiritual understanding of what the planets stand for before we start in later episodes talking about how they might be used and seen in a horoscope chart and how you can read your own birth chart. But it's important that you get these basics underway, and you probably don't hear the spiritual background to the astrological glyphs of the planets and the star signs. So here we are. Now, first of all, let's deal with the Sun. Now, the Sun, as you can see here, the glyph is that of a circle with a point in the middle of it. The Sun is the most important planet in the solar system and in astrology, and we call it a planet, by the way. We also call the Moon a planet. We'll get to the Moon in just a second. Now, the Sun, of course, is the highest gravitational pull of any of the bodies that are in the solar system, which is why all the other planets revolve around it. But what it also does have is, and I think as you will recall from one of the earlier videos, is that, by the way, this video will also be placed in the playlist called Astrology for Beginners. It'll be very easy to find on the playlist on my channel. And you can look at this as well as any other videos in the Astrology for Beginners section, which takes your interest. Now, we look at this central point here with the Sun. The central point in the glyph of the Sun represents the fountainhead of primeval energy from which all manifestation arises. And this area here, this circumference here, can be seen as manifestation. It comes from within there. Metaphorically, everything comes from the Sun, and the Sun, metaphorically, includes everything within it. Now, when we look at the spiritual approach to the glyph of the Sun like that, it's not hard to see why, in days gone past, people such as in the ancient Egyptians and other nations and cultures around the world paid such reverence to the Sun, like a sun god. It's because it embodied great spiritual underpinning. It wasn't because it was this flaming star in the sky, but because of what it represented, the spiritual undertone for it. Now, the circumference of the Sun necessarily comes from the point. In fact, the point, if you like, the central fountainhead of divinity, expands to become the circumference and everything within it. So you can say that it is the divinity which is within and comprises everything that's in manifestation. So all objective forms really are simply just externalizations of the energy that comes from the center of the Sun. Now, there is a direction to solar impact as well. It is precise in how it goes about things. The energy is radiated precisely, and it also represents metaphorically the descent on the outer circumference. I'll make use of this once more. It also represents the descent of the soul into matter and its reascent back to union with the divinity. It's also said that the Sun watches the universe and that nothing happens in the universe without the Sun being aware of it. A sparrow can fall dead from a branch, and it is within the knowledge of the Sun. The Sun is also said to be the repository of karma. So all of your deeds are said to be withheld and held in the Sun. Now, the next thing that we're going to look at is the Moon. The Moon is, and I'll just draw 2 arcs here. Isn't this high tech? My daughter told me that I'd only just got used to carbon paper. Children. Now, there is a representation of the glyph of The moon. The moon, of course, is the closest planet to that of Earth. In fact, if you look at the moon when it is a full moon, and although you can't look directly at the sun, but you can get a general picture of what its size is, they appear to be the same size. The full moon and the sun actually appear to be the same size. The moon is two arcs drawn like that. Now, one might also look at the moon in this direction, such as like that, where it becomes almost like a cup or a receptacle for receiving things. Now, the moon is, well, despite what many people think, I think that the moon is actually very mysterious. And I think the moon can actually be quite dangerous at times. I think there can be some danger associated with the moon. The moon, of course, is the planet that moves around the Earth quicker than anything else. It stays in your sun sign for just over a couple of days, 12 sun signs, 24 days. But times 2, so 12 times 2, and add a bit more. So it whips around very quickly. There is confusion about the gender of the moon. Traditionally, and I suppose in Vedic astrology, incidentally, has always been known as Hindu astrology until about the 1970s when the hippie generation got involved in it. A great degree of practitioners within the Vedic system, and I'll do some videos on the Vedic astrology at another time. They see the moon as being masculine, but I see the moon as being very feminine. It's a very feminine planet. And the reason why I say this is that because for me, I see it as being it's because of the female generation principle that's involved in it. It's actually, I think, one could say, the cosmic mother or the cosmic womb. It receives its light from the sun. It receives solar energy from the sun, and if you like, it then becomes pregnant with that spiritual energy. Continuing the spiritual discourse that we are underway with now, it becomes pregnant with that spiritual energy, and then it turns around and it directs that energy towards Earth and concentrates spirit into matter. But the moon is also known to withdraw and go away. For me, and I think it's a good thing for you to do, is to understand that the moon actually represents the psyche. It is the psyche. And of course, the moon goes through eclipses from times to times. In fact, the moon is very changeable. One can look at this picture, for example, this glyph, and you can say to yourself, is this a waxing moon in the early stage? Is it a waning moon in the late stages? Is it a moon which is under a eclipse? Or is it something else? Is it something like a huge wave in the ocean, which is like the sea of emotions that come through? But what it does, though, is it is when it finds itself in the position where the earth is between the sun and it, spiritual energy is withheld from the moon. Now, a lot of people jump up and down and say how exciting eclipses are, but I actually think that there are times that people need to be careful. And in terms of astrology, we can talk further about that in videos to come. But eclipses, for me, generally are not a good thing because of that withholding of physical energy and the role of the moon in transferring spiritual energy, in transferring spiritual energy to the earth to create manifestation, matter manifested out of spirit. I think what one can say is, and this is also an interesting thing here, is that if you take that away, you can see that it is almost like half of the circle of the sun. So one can really see its dependence upon the sun for its being and for the role that it plays spiritually and within astrology in particular. I think it's safe to say that the moon is pure consciousness. It is pure consciousness. And what it does is it projects the spiritual radiance of the sun to earth. So pure consciousness. Now, I raise that issue of pure consciousness then because it takes us to the final planet that we're going to discuss, and that is that of Mercury. Now, I'm going to first of all draw this. If you look at this, you will probably recognize that, because in the previous videos I told you that unfortunately there is no other way around it. You have to get on Wikipedia and learn what the different glyphs of the planets and signs are. That this is the glyph for the planet of Venus. Well, you know that half circle that I showed you just a moment ago, showing the great connection that the moon has to the sun? Well, the glyph for Venus, for Mercury rather, has that arc placed on top. And there we have basically Venus with an arc on top. And that arc, some might say it comes from the moon. I think in Sanskrit, the Vedic scholars referred to Mercury as, I think it was Samaya, which is Sanskrit, I'm showing off here, which is means son of Soma, or son of the moon. Now, what this arc does is it says, well, it demonstrates that Mercury here has really all of the qualities of Venus itself. I may as well say it now, that Venus is androgynous. It is neither male nor female. But Mercury has the qualities of Venus, so it has the qualities of sensitivity, it has the qualities of perception, and it also has the tendency of Venus to bring things down into matter, to prefer materialization to that of the world of spirit. Now, under Mercury's impulse, Venus's qualities, therefore, are either a much greater materialization and sensation through our senses of the world and pleasure of senses in the world, or it can move you higher away. Mercury is related to the mind. Under Mercury's impulse, it's also important to say that with this link to the moon, for me, moon being pure consciousness, what Mercury is, because of its mind, able to do is to act as a bridge between the pure consciousness of the moon and material and spiritual life on the planet Earth, and for someone just like you. So that is the role, I suppose you would say, of Mercury. Mercury is very much related to the mind. It's the son of the moon, and it's the bridge to actualization of things in the world. Now, what I'd say finally is that with this arc on the top of this circle here, now Mercury, of course, is also concerned with, and you'll recall from an earlier video, very much concerned with matters material, as is Venus, because this horizontal line here represents being in eternity in matter, This line represents, as you'll recall, being in eternity in spirit. And this, of course, being reference to, without the dot in the middle of it, but reference to the field of manifestation. What is the potential field of manifestation that may come from the divine? Well, this arc here enables you to it can push into the thoughts of materialization so that one can be immersed in them, or it can move away, having received the divine energy, into this receptacle, if you like, divine energy into this chalice. It's another way of looking at it. And say, no, I'm actually going to move the individual away from purely sense-based enjoyment of the matter, but also to understand that they are not in bondage to matter, but are also free. Well, that's it for those 3 planets. In the next video, we will touch on Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. So I'm looking forward to that. But in the meantime, remember one thing, and it is this, that you are a legend. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, it's bye for now.